What is up, Fanatics? It is 8 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means another episode of Home Theater Fanatics Live. Tonight is episode 175, and we've got a great one. So I don't know if everybody knows, but I've been trying to get this brand and this particular gentleman on the show for a while. I've been chasing them. You know, it's just like I can't catch him. But tonight, we finally have him on, and it's Jim Thompson from EgglestonWorks. And if you guys aren't familiar with this company, you need to be, because they have some of the most beautiful and great sounding speakers on the market. I mean, this stuff is amazing. I've seen it at a few shows over time, and I've blown away no matter what model they bring. So everybody, please welcome Jim to the show. Jim, welcome.
Hi, Jiles. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, it's all my pleasure and my honors. Thank you so much for joining. I think to get things kicked off for everyone, maybe for the folks that don't know who you and your brand EgglestonWorks is, you can talk a little bit about who you are and the company, just a little bit, to let them know what you're all about.
Sure. My name is Jim Thompson. I'm the owner and chief designer for EgglestonWorks loudspeakers. We are a small Memphis-based loudspeaker company. We produce 10 models of speakers, ranging from a little stand mount called the Nico, and rising up and getting bigger and adding drivers as we go, up to our top of the line Ivy reference speaker. Our company was, as I said, we've been around for almost 26 and a half years, which is hard to believe, but we got very lucky in the beginning of our days, where a few mastering engineers latched on to what we were doing and really put us on the map, and we've been just rolling ever since.
You know, I was going to ask that question. Since you're there in Memphis, it seems like you have access to a lot of industry, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. So, what is that kind of part of the DNA of the company? And has there been a strong relationship between the folks that create music and your brand of reproducing the music over time?
I mean, definitely Memphis plays a big role. It's such a part of everything that we do. It feels like it's part of everything we do as Memphians, is something music related. My dad, who's passed away now, but he for 40 years owned a music store, mainly keyboards, and in the end it was mainly just church organs. So obviously we're down in the deep South, so there's a lot of churches and they all need organs, and so my dad was a big part of that, and so we were just ensconced in music constantly, and then as I've grown up and as we've built this company, obviously the recording studios, there's just a plethora of recording studios in town that have really storied pasts or are new and upcoming and making a name for themselves. So we've gotten to be really connected to a lot of those places.
That makes a lot of sense. I grew up just maybe not a stone's throw, maybe a kind of pretty hard throw in Alabama, so not too far from you guys. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that how these great companies come out of these places that are so rich with music. So that's great. I think to familiarize people even a little bit more, I'm going to pull up the website and maybe we can talk a little bit about the different products and the different speakers that you have,
Sure.
because I think people really need to see these things. They really need to hear them, but just looking at them, I think will inform people a little bit kind of about what you're doing, because these aren't your run-of-the-mill kind of speakers, right? I mean, these are a little bit different. So which would you want to start with? I'll pull up.
Well, you got the Oso there. So the Oso is the newest, but the bottom of that list, the Nico, and it kind of goes up. So the Nico is the entry level. It's a
Nico.
Yeah, it's a stand mount. People remind me constantly, certain types of people remind me that stand mounts and bookshelves are kind of their own category. And so to say it's our entry level, it is our entry level price point. But I think I also share the opinion that a stand mount may be its own animal. And so it's kind of lives in its own little world. So the next speaker up is the Emma, which, and the Emma and the Oso and the Nico all share kind of this angled. Yeah, we're working on a new website. These pictures are awkward for this.
Some are better than others for sure, but
if you go to the next one in the Oso, you can see it. You can see the family resemblance to the Nico, and the Oso is our newest product. And I say new. This is with the caveat that this is a COVID related new. So it was new it was supposed to be new in the beginning of 2020, and then we didn't have any shows to take it to. So no one really saw it, but we did start shipping it and selling it with really no show support or much in the way of that kind of marketing, and it's done really well even without that. So we're pretty happy with that one.
Yeah, and just to talk about this speaker a bit, and to comment on what you said before, I do agree that stand mounts are completely animals of their own, and I don't really think they compete directly against towers. I think someone who's going to buy a tower is not someone who's looking for a stand mount, and vice versa. Because I know in my personal experience, the way that I use the speakers, I use them very differently for different applications. So I agree. So I wouldn't consider your stand mounts low end, right? I mean, I think those stand alone on their own merits quite well. But the Oso, this speaker really, really calls to me. I like it a lot because this is and this is going to be true of a lot of your other speakers as well. But this is a full range beast. What is that? Is that a 10 dual 6.5s and a tweeter?
Correct. Yeah, yeah, exactly. The idea behind that speaker was to keep to keep a slender, more narrow face, and not. We wanted to put a 10-inch woofer in it. That was kind of
we're doing this 10 when we were
putting a 10. We knew that was the performance level we wanted this model to have, but I didn't want to have a big honking 10-inch woofer on the front. It would change everything about the speaker, and it would change. I thought where it could live and where it could exist as far as the more of a lifestyle product that isn't as visually dominating as some of our other models. So we put that woofer on the side, and I don't think we're that unusual to do it. I know lots of different models that do it, but it was a very I guess there were a lot of question marks when people saw that we did it, because we had never done that before. So it was just kind of a new thing for us, not really that we invented anything drastic, but this speaker is pretty amazing. It, all the cliches of hitting above its weight class, whatever you want to say. This is
all those audiophile terms.
Yeah. This one does it. This one is, this thing is great. Works in big rooms, small rooms, all kinds of music. It's just it checks all the boxes.
Yeah. So for me, when I look at the product portfolio, of your speakers in you know, specifically, and then just speakers in general, you know, this form factor really opens up a lot of applications for the use of these speakers. And I'm a big proponent of multi-format rooms, right? So, you know, I do have a dedicated 2-channel area, but I have 2 other spaces that integrate speakers along with a video type of component, right? One's a full theater with projection, right? And the other is a television type area.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the narrow form factor because it allows me to put this in rooms where I need that front space for other things as well, other than just the speakers, and then a rack in the middle with amplification and sources and that kind of thing. So I really, really, really like this one a lot. And I like that you can have a speaker in this form factor that you can put into a space where it can support a television or a video source, but it can do it at audiophile quality of sound. So I appreciate the effort that you guys went through to figure out how can we make this form factor, because I do think this opens up a whole different segment of customers for you outside of, I just want 2 big honking speakers that are going to be awesome and, you know, a stack of stuff, right? This I can put with a television or an ultra short throw projector and throw up, you know, a concert and just really get into it, right, at a very high level of performance.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know if it's something I didn't consciously start paying attention to when I started hearing this, but it's been recently in the last few years. But people have been saying, you know, because I get emails and I get calls about advice, you know, saying
Sure.
what speaker fits in with your line, what you know, amp matching, these different things. This is my room size, this kind of thing. It started to be more of a thing where people would say, now this is the living room or this is the family room. Like they wanted to be very clear that this wasn't a dedicated room, but they still wanted that kind of listening room performance. And so, you know, the Emma and the Oso fit that description in a way that maybe some of our other bigger speakers, you know, maybe don't look like they do. I know a lot of people do use them that way, but these are a little more family room friendly, I guess, is something you could say.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. So Hi-Fi Haven asks, are these the ones that Emiko has?
Yes. Yes.
Except they're not in purple.
Correct. Correct. So the form factor things that you're talking about and the blending into a living room goes out the window when you paint them a crazy purple color, right? So you can definitely tone them down with you know, black or a nice silver, but we'll also paint them purple if you want.
Sure, right on. So let's jump on up to the Kivas.
Yep.
And you know, these are very striking.
Yeah.
I mean, look, just that's great. And what is that? Dual 8s, dual 6.5s, and a tweeter? Is that?
It's a 6 and 7.5 for the
Okay.
the bass. With this speaker actually, before the Oso, this was the one that we did just before it, and that one was an all new speaker. That was just like the Oso. That wasn't a speaker that existed before, but it was based on the Vigenti, which is higher up in the line. And what I mean by based on it is the cabinet design is almost identical in its layout. So the mids are in individual tubes within the cabinet, so they're kind of in their own individual spaces. The bass section is together and it's slot ported in the rear, almost exactly the same way as the Vigenti. So this was we called it the baby Vigenti as we were making it, which
Right.
I'm glad we didn't stick with that and went with the Kiva. But this is a really great speaker. Now this speaker is it's bigger than it seems. You can kind of, the dimensions are there, but when you see it in person, it's not a small speaker. So
Yeah, 4 foot tall, 130 pounds,
yeah.
10.5 inches wide, 22 inches deep. Now, are the two mids and tweeters in, what is that called? The Apolito array, or
Yeah. So MTM, whatever.
sure, yeah, however you want to refer to it. Makes sense. Right on. And then, all right, let's move on up and start getting into some of these big boys, because these get really big. All right, so this is the Camilla, and it's kind of hard to see from
the Camilla is going to be hard for you guys to see. The Camilla was a I don't know if you call it a passion project or just one of these. It's a 1-inch dome tweeter with a 9-inch woofer.
Right.
That's it. And this idea was kind of based around, these kind of classic studio monitors that had that, component layout. I always thought they sounded really good. There was the Meyer, I forget which one, the HD1 or something like that, had the 1-inch and the 9-inch, and somehow with a really ordinary cabinet, they could produce such great sound in a smaller space. And so we kind of did the Camilla thinking about people using it in a smaller space. And at first it was going to be also a stand mount, but a 9-inch woofer needs a little more bass cabinetry. So that stand is integrated, and so it's actually part of the tuning for the bass.
I was gonna ask if it was possible to have that in a stand mount, because stand mounts with the 1-inch and then like an 8-inch ish size bass driver are a favorite of mine. I love that form factor, so because I've always felt that they're just such overachievers for the footprint that they exist in.
Yeah, agree. I think we could pull it off as a stand mount. Maybe if we went powered with it, because that's such a big driver. We could maybe get away with the bass response if we did it powered, but we're not in that in that realm at this point. I can't hear you for some reason.
How about now?
There you go. You're back. All right.
Yeah. So I've got a new monitor, and it has. So for everybody out there, if you want to see a new monitor review, I'm going to be reviewing this. But it has I'm not going to say it, but it's that voice activated tool from Amazon. But it's built into the monitor itself, and every once in a while it'll catch a word that it thinks is that special word,
right.
And it goes into, all right, tell me what to do, and I'm all like, uh-oh. So it's kind of interesting how these things come together. But yeah, I really like the Camilla a lot, and man, if there could be like the Camilla small edition in a stand mount, that would be exciting. All right, now let's move on up to what is it, Andra 3?
Yeah, Andra. Depending on what part of the country you're from, you say it.
Right on. And now this one is super striking. I mean, look at the design on this guy. That's ridiculous.
So this is really the fourth iteration for this speaker. And I know it says the Andra 3 SE, but the SE made it into the fourth iteration. There's some reasons that we didn't use a number 4, and some of them are just superstition. But the original Andra was the speaker that we came out with first. So this speaker has been in production in some iterations since the beginning of the company. So it looks quite different now than it looked at the beginning, but it still has the flavor.
Now, what's the driver complement on this?
So it's a 1-inch dome tweeter, 2 6s for the mids, and then there's actually dual 12s. So there's another 12-inch inside the cabinet in a compound load.
Right now, so is it kind of like this, or are they face to face going like this? Or?
They're both moving outward. They're both one behind the other.
Gotcha.
Seeing the same information, both active.
Awesome. All right, and then from there, we will pop into the Vigenti. Vigenti?
Yeah, Vigenti.
Got it.
So Vigenti is Latin for the word 20. You can read that in our text there, but it was a celebration of a couple of 20-year milestones. One was, when we officially say we began as a company, and then bringing out the Andra. And so this was kind of a celebration of all of those things in that 20-year mark. And it was such a jumping off point for us as far as cabinet design. The cabinet really changed, and there's some internally, it really got complicated and really just advanced for us.
Right.
Big a big port there in the bottom. You see that bass clef inside. It was just a brace, and I was like, well, it's the bass section. Let's make the brace look like a bass clef. Nobody will see it, but
it's in there.
It's interesting, and so we had to take a picture of it and put it on the website so people would know it was there.
That's gorgeous.
But then, so the Viginti is, it's probably the perfect combination of the different elements of our line that kind of come together in the middle into that speaker. It kind of embodies all of the things we do lower down the line and the things we do up in the upper ranges.
Right on. So let's take a question before we move on to the next model. So AA, he's still not AAA yet, but one day he's working on AA. Asks, how efficient in general are your speakers? Does it vary by model? So what kind of power are people looking at when they want to power these beasts, right? Because they are beasts.
Yeah. So like the Nico, the Emma, the Oso, I would tell people moderate size room, 80 to 100 watts would be a good starting point. They can handle pretty much anything you can throw at them. We don't put a maximum wattage on any of the models because the mid ranges are so robust and they can take so much of a pounding. But the combination that I think I've seen on that entry level line is about 135 watts is fantastic. It's kind of the sweet spot. You get into the Andras, I would say 100 to 150 watts is what you should start at. And then, he asked about a 270 watt amp. Be great if you have it, throw it at it. It doesn't have to have that. There's the Viginti right now in our sound room, just because I was changing a bunch of amps out and I couldn't do without music. I connected it to a Rogue Audio Sphinx that's actually about maybe 8 years old, and I think it back then it was 90 watts, and it kills on the Viginti. So they're not super efficient, but the impedance is not doing something crazy on anything, so you're not really getting into danger levels with anything.
So for the segment of people that are hardcore into these like 9-watt tube amplifier, that segment of kind of esoteric amplification folks, is any of that kind of compatible with your speakers?
We actually have it's a one-off tube amp that a friend of mine from Taiwan made, and I think it's 12. I think it puts out 12 watts, Class A, and I've been shocked at what I can put it on, and
Right.
and it worked just fine. It's just amazing. I don't think we're making a speaker for that market necessarily, but I always encourage people that want to use a tube amp to try it if they can, and it's really hard to know sometimes if the tube amp's got the output that's going to be there for
that's always the struggle,
regardless of wattage.
Right on. Okay, so let's move on up the line here, and I think next is the Savoy Signature Se.
Yeah, so we could look at the Savoy, and then you could go to the Ivy. They basically are, the Savoy is the smaller version of the Ivy. we produced the Ivy first, and that was the one we came out with the first Ivy. So the Ivy is also in its third iteration. The Ivy we brought out in 1998. It was built specifically for Bob Ludwig at Gateway Mastering, and he was already using the original Andras in some mastering studios at his at Gateway, and he said to us, "I stand up when I master, so I need a high tweeter height." So when you look at the Ivy picture, you'll see that tweeter is about at 54 inches off the ground, which people point out that that's too tall for listening in a chair, in a normal chair. Not necessarily. It seems to work out just fine, but we did build it with someone specifically in mind. So the Savoy was the answer to the Ivy's just too much. It's 7 feet tall and weighs 650 pounds, and who can afford it, who can move it, who can get it in the elevator to get it into their apartment, any of these things. So we created the Savoy to address those issues while still maintaining kind of its over the top design. The Ivy features 6 12-inch drivers per side. It features 12 6-inches per side. So all of these compound, overly loaded driver complements. The Savoy that we're looking at right now has 2 12s you see and 2 behind, so 1 behind each one, so 4 per cabin.
12s only.
Yeah, and then 2 mid-bass drivers, 1 behind that one, and then you get the MTM at the top, and that's what you see is what you get there.
Right. Yeah. So what I want to point out to everyone is, when you look at the specifications, the frequency response on this speaker is 18 to 24,000 hertz, right? So 24,000 is kind of whatever, but the 18 hertz coming out of your towers, that's pretty special. Mm-hmm. So this, from my point of view, is you're really getting into the kind of speaker that when you're going to run a stereo set of speakers along with a video component, I really like this because this lets you have it all, right? Mm-hmm. When you're listening to music, right, you get to have it all as well, but there's not quite as much content in music down at the 20 hertz level as you'll find in some kind of television or movie that has special effects. And this can hammer that stuff home. Right. And this, if you're a connoisseur of television and you want to experience TV or movies in a 2-channel setup, man, this is the way to do it. Unless you really want to do it right, and then you go up to the Ivy, and the speaker we were just looking at was like, I think 250 pounds, but the Ivy is just absolutely monolithic.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, this is, frequency response down to 13 hertz. This is good stuff. Although 600 pounds, yeah, I don't even know how I would deal with that. Does installation come in the price?
Probably does. The dealers that actually can move these things are set up for that type of thing. I know it's not going in my house. It would end up in the basement. So
yeah, you'd have to have a service elevator to get it down to the basement.
Yeah.
This thing is just stunning. Now, one question I've always had is, what kind of feet are on this? I can't really tell from the picture.
Yeah. So the feet we sourced these early on. They were it's a medical device company makes them. They're for instrumentation tables that need to be moved around, but that are quite heavy. It has a ratcheting foot that comes down, so it's on a caster, a real low profile caster, and then once you get it in place, there's a ratchet, just a thumb wheel, and you can lower those feet down, and it pulls the wheels up off the ground, and gives it it has a layer of like a rubber material in between that and the actual foot, so it supplies a great amount of decoupling. It's great.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely outstanding, and for a speaker this size and weight, that's a wonderful feature to have because it makes it not so daunting, I guess, if you've got a pair and you need to move it over a foot or something, right? And you don't have the installation crew there. So I really appreciate that detail on the speaker. And okay, so this is kind of the top end, the top of the line.
Yeah.
How much do they cost? I got to know what's the MSRP, so to speak.
MSRP right now is 170.
Oh, that's not nearly as much as I thought it would be.
There's a lot of speakers out there that cost a lot more than that.
Yeah, I mean that's not inexpensive, but it's also not $1 million, right?
No.
Now that I think for the Uber enthusiast, right, that is looking for kind of what I would consider to be a unicorn speaker, right? I mean, it's something that you're not going to see every day, right? And it's got performance levels that you're not going to encounter every day. I mean, it's special, it's different, and if you're not, if you don't have millions laying around, maybe you do have 150 to get started, right? And I think this is an excellent way to go. So everybody out there, check these out. These are cool, and they're 7 feet tall. Is that right?
They're 6'7".
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
The idea behind that was that it would fit through a standard door. They would roll through without being tipped over. The thing that we didn't count on in being so smart about that is that standard is only standard in the United States. And so in other parts of the world, doors are not standard. And so we ran into a lot of issues with small doorways in Hong Kong or in other parts of the world where things don't abide by
construction is very different.
Yes.
Yeah, I just got back from Asia for summer vacation, and it's quite different. And this leads to a question. This isn't something that's kind of in our outline, but it is interesting to me to kind of understand what are the markets where you have customers at, right? And it looks to me like this one would be, and just the line in general would be super popular in Asia. And for folks that don't know, there is just a massive, super high-end audio culture all through Asia. Japan, even in China, down in Malaysia and Indonesia, Thailand. There are people with just amazing audiophile systems there. Have you guys broken into that market? Are you popular there? Maybe more in Europe, or?
I would say we're definitely more popular in Asia than most other places. We actually in 2014 opened we had bounced around from different mainland China distributors, like everyone in the 90s. We had a Hong Kong distributor, and
right.
And then not much going on because not much was going on in mainland China. And then that started to grow and change, and the Hong Kong dealers wanted to do it, but they couldn't, and they clamped down on that a little bit. And so in 2014, we actually partnered with a company there and opened our own distribution company, our own distribution office. So we have 4 employees in Shanghai that do distribution throughout mainland. So mainland China is our biggest market by far. After that, the biggest market in terms of volume would be France, and then the other French speaking nations in Europe. And then after that, it's this smattering of other Asian countries, and they change from year to year. And it just happens that, whichever economy is doing better is doing a lot more business throughout their area. So whether that's Singapore or Korea. Korea is amazing. We have a great partner in Korea. And the HiFi culture in Korea is insane. There are HiFi clubs in Korea. Like people will join a gym. You can join a HiFi club. The difference would be that your HiFi gear is there and it's centrally located because maybe you don't have room at the house to have it. But the nice thing is that you get to use everybody else's gear with your gear. And so you just schedule time to go in. And I went to one of them and I was like, this is millions of dollars of HiFi gear. And if you belong, and it's a nominal fee to belong because you're committing your gear to everyone else, kind of like a co-op. So it's interesting.
Yeah, that is something that does not exist, at least as far as I know, in the U.S.
No.
And it's really cool. I love the international perspective because it shows that while the end result, everybody wants to have that experience, right? There's a lot of different ways to get there, and like the HiFi clubs in Korea, man, what a great way to have access to, like you said, millions of dollars worth of gear, right? That otherwise it would be impossible for most folks to have that, right? It's really cool. It's like when you go to a HiFi show, and maybe we'll jump and talk about that just a little bit, kind of out of order. You get to see, feel, touch, hear all of these pieces of gear that you wouldn't even be able to see at a dealer, right? It's just too much stuff, right? And speaking of shows, are you guys back active now? I think you were at Expona, right? I think I saw you there.
We did Expona. We just got back from Munich back in May. I feel like we just got back. So we got back in May. From that was about 2 or 3 weeks right after Expona, right on the heels. And then we're headed in about 3 weeks to Seattle for Pacific Audio Fest. So
yeah, and that's a brand new one, and this is their first year out, right?
Yeah. So we've got a dealer up that way that's north of Seattle, and they're doing it. They're getting excited about it. So we're going to come up and support them and be there and see what the new show's about. I'm excited about it. I was nervous about Expona for a couple of reasons. I didn't know if people would go. I didn't know if I wanted to be in crowds, all those kinds of things. And then we got there and it was amazing. It was packed, and we were busy the entire time. And I think people were starved for it.
It was definitely a really good show.
It was great. Yeah. And then Munich was great. Munich, again, a little hesitant about, because Munich is not an inexpensive proposition for a manufacturer to do, a U.S. manufacturer especially. There's a lot of travel and a lot of shipping and a lot of everything. And we got there and it was down in attendance, yes, but not as noticeably as you would have thought. It was just, we had a great show. We had great experiences. We saw the people we wanted to see and did a bunch of fun stuff. So it was, I'm so glad that 2.5 years of not going, on these trips is hopefully behind us.
Yeah. The prediction that the HiFi show is dead has been vastly overrated.
Yeah.
HiFi shows are here to stay, and I agree. They are starting to rev back up, and unless we have some type of big turn again, I think next year, well, at least I hope that we'll see shows almost back to where they were, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Because for me, my favorite thing in HiFi is doing this show, right? I really love to do this show every week and talk to companies and other personalities and whoever it might be. I really enjoy that. But beyond that, I really like going to the shows and interacting with the people and listening and talking, right, and creating content around that piece. So I'm very happy that things are back. And we're talking about COVID there. So let's just touch on that just a little bit, because I know that impacted everybody, and I'm curious how that impacted you, right? So there are two flip sides to the coin, right? So one is okay, we couldn't do all these other things, so we took time to do R&D or do this thing or that thing. So that's one side. And so I'm curious if there's anything that you found advantageous because you had an opportunity that you might not have had otherwise. And then on the flip side, what type of challenges has that created for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's some of both, right? I mean, it was um, uh, the challenges happened at the beginning, right? And it was, oh no, what are we going to do? Are people buying stuff? Are we, who's going to buy our products? All of these things, and then that started to happen almost as after a few weeks as a spike. We started to see more orders. Well, that created the problem of supply. We had certain things. We source drive units from 4 to 5 different companies in different countries. They all had different situations with COVID. Some very strict, some were shut down for extended periods of time. So there were supply issues. So then we did like a lot of people, we overbought, which was okay. We're going to use it. But there was a cash crunch, of course. You have to go out, you have to buy things, you have to do these things. So that all kind of has leveled out. What the really great thing that's come out of it, I think, is where we had to pivot because while we couldn't get materials or there were slowdowns or things like that, and sales were going up, people were having these extremely long lead times. And there is a limit to what people will deal with, as far as here's how long it's going to be before you get your product. To some degree, it's handmade. To some degree, we're going through a global pandemic, and we all understand that. But at some point, we can buy something else. And so
we're not waiting a year.
Right. And so, and in some cases, that could be what we were looking at. So just in one area, I could tell you a bunch of really boring little areas, but in one area that was kind of big. So we talked a minute ago or earlier about our paint finishes. So we do custom paint finishes on all of our speakers. Well, it's automotive paint. We can custom paint any color, but everything is painted to order. That can create a bottleneck when you only have one paint booth and one paint person. And then all of the things that have to happen after it gets painted when you have a lot of speakers heading there at the same time. So, we went to the folks that we use different paint manufacturers, but we settled with Sherwin-Williams Automotive as our main supplier. And what they have done, and they're in the process of doing, we don't have it perfected yet, but if it hadn't been for COVID, we wouldn't be doing this. And that is, we've installed a paint mixing system that is, it is state of the art. And it was really to their credit to see us as not a huge customer of theirs, but a pretty important one and kind of a cool one that they could say, hey, these guys are doing this thing. This looks good in a brochure maybe, or on our website or something like that. And it's a system that you'll find at some of the biggest, body shops, detail shops, custom car making places in the world. We're going to have the system in our space, and it was a direct response to these long lead times and these things, and so we needed to get to where we could mix the paint on demand, not waste it, have that paint process move faster, and all of the bad things that came with COVID and all of the horrible parts of it, there were some silver linings as far as the production process. For sure, we had to really start making some tough decisions, think really creatively, and address some things in ways that we didn't see coming. So,
right. So as you talked about paint, all I could think in my head was, okay, so after I've got my first 2 Ivies in this esoteric paint color, and I decide, hey, I want to turn this into a multi-channel system, so I need 3 more for a center channel and 2 surrounds.
Yeah,
you can get the paint spot on.
Yeah,
right?
Yes. So doing automotive paint is unlike it's sort of like inks and things like that, but automotive paint is really good because there's codes. And as long as we pick a color that has a code instead of a custom color. Um, every once in a while, a hot rod enthusiast will call us, and the hot rod guys live in a different universe where
Right.
they want a color that no one else has. Like they don't want a coat. And so, they'll do something like that. They'll say, hey, match this. And we're like, well, that's not exactly how our paint process works. But the good thing is, in the scenario you're talking about, is we can do something later. If somebody wants a similar color on another pair of speakers, we can match it exactly. So it's a little more scientific. So it's nice.
That's awesome. Cool. And there's one last thing I want to talk about. We're getting toward the end of our time, and I think this is an important one for folks, right? So we've talked through all the models, and people have kind of seen what's going on. When they're ready to experience these, right, and then even when they're ready to make purchases, how does that work in your world? So are you fully working, in the channel? There's no direct sales, right? So you need to find a reseller partner for this kind of thing. So how do people typically engage to purchase your equipment?
So, you can go to our website and see our dealer list. Admittedly, we don't have that many. We've added a few in the last couple of weeks. We're looking for dealers all the time. We had a real big push pre-COVID, kind of expanding the dealer base and doing all of that. Right now, the way it happens is people send us emails directly because, if they look at the dealer list, they'll say, well, they don't cover 60% of the country.
Right.
Where would I go, and what would be the best way to do that? And so we'll connect them with either the closest dealer or the dealer that is the most capable of supplying them with a certain product. So some of our dealers have been, more versed in the Ivies and Savoy sales than some of the others. I know some manufacturers out there, they require you to carry a model before you can sell it. While we would love for that to happen,
Right.
I don't think we're in a position to put that onus on any of the dealers that we're happy to have. So, we'll connect you with a dealer and they'll take care of you. So we have few, relatively few, but they are strong and they're great, and they're ready to help out.
Great. No, that's awesome. And then I guess the other alternative is they can find out your show schedule.
Yep.
And pick a show where you're going to be there with the speakers that they want to hear.
Yeah.
And then they can hear your stuff and a bunch of other people's as well, which is cool.
Yeah. For a while it seemed like there were too many shows, and then we went through a time when there weren't any shows. And now it seems like when you look at the map, and hopefully if they're well run, having something in Seattle now is a great, fill in, because that was kind of a spot where we needed something. You have something in California. Hopefully the replacement for Rocky Mountain will be a success. Exponent, of course.
Because I live in Colorado, and losing Rocky Mountain, man, a lot of people cried here.
Yeah. Us too. I loved that one. And if somebody can figure out how in the world to have a show in New York City again, that would be fantastic. It seems to be very challenging to have one year after year and build this presence again. And I think we need one in New York City. But
that would seem to be a no-brainer, but I can understand how there could be a lot of issues around costs and that kind of thing in New York City. So
sure.
Cool. Right on. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and call it now. Jim, thank you so much for coming on the show. You have a very impressive product lineup. I mean, if people want high end, this is it. Every single piece that you make is, kind of a gem in its own right, all the way from the huge ones down to the small ones. Very impressive. And every time I've heard them, they've always just been impeccable. So my hat's off to you for the design work and the care that you put into the production of these speakers, because you can tell. Even down to that bass clef note inside of the box for the bracing. Those details matter whether people see them or not. It's all part of, I think, the process that you go through in the design. So thank you so much for coming on and showing us your equipment.
Well, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it. This has been a lot of fun.
Right on. And everybody else out there, thank you so much for spending some time with us tonight. You know how much I appreciate you coming on here and joining us. So thank you for that. If you have any questions about EgglestonWorks and you can't figure out how to engage, feel free to reach out to me. I'll make sure to get you in contact with whoever you need to be in contact to get your answers or your questions answered. I'm always happy to do that. So don't be shy. And all the contact information you need will be in the notes down below. So you can find the website and everything from there. So thanks so much again, Jim, and everybody else. Have a wonderful evening. I'll see you guys in the next show.